Hello, I am Dr. Moushumi Pal. Today, I am going to talk about environmental legislations. India is the first country in the world to have made provisions for the protection and conservation of environment in its constitution. On 5th June 1972, environment was first discussed as an item of international agenda in the United Nations Conference on Human Environment in Stockholm, and thereafter 5th June is celebrated all over the world as World Environment Day. Soon after Stockholm Conference, our country India took some substantive legislative steps for environmental protection. And thus we have the Wildlife Protection Act that was passed in 1972, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, the Forest Conservation Act 1980, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, and the Environment Protection Act in 1986. Constitutional provisions. The provisions for environmental protection in the Constitution were made within 4 years of Stockholm Conference in 1976 through the 42nd Amendment as follows. First, Article 48A of the Constitution provides the state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard forests and wildlife of the country. Whereas Article 51AG provides it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Thus, our Constitution includes environmental protection and conservation as one of our fundamental duties. Now, I am going to talk about the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. The Act is a landmark in the history of wildlife legislation in our country that came into existence in 1972. Wildlife was transferred from state list to concurrent list in 1976 and thus giving power to the central government to enact the legislation. The Indian Board of Wildlife (IBWL) was created in 1952. The major activities and provisions in the Act can be summarized as follows. It defines wildlife related terminologies. It provides for the appointment of Wildlife Advisory Board, Wildlife Warden, their powers, duties, etc. Under this Act, comprehensive listing of endangered wildlife species was done for the first time and prohibition of hunting of the endangered species was mentioned. Protection to some endangered plants like blue vanda, lady slipper orchid, pitcher plant, etc. is also provided under the Act. The Act provides for setting up of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. The Act provides for the constitution of Central Zoo Authority. There is provision for trade and commerce in some wildlife species with license for sale, possession, transfer, etc. The Act imposes a ban on the trade and commerce in scheduled animals, and it provides for legal powers to officers and punishment to offenders. It provides captive breeding program for endangered species. Several conservation projects for individual endangered species like lion 1972, tiger 1973, and etc. were started under this Act. The Act is adopted by all states in India except Jammu and Kashmir, which has its own Act. Some of the major drawbacks of the Act include mild penalty to offenders, illegal wildlife trade in Jammu and Kashmir, personal ownership certificate for animals, Articles like tiger and leopard schemes, no coverage of foreign endangered wildlife, pitiable condition of wildlife in mobile zoos, and little emphasis on protection of plant genetic resources. Thank you. Please comment, share and subscribe my channel.